This show is made possible through underwriting support from the Bohannon Foundation.
Hi, this is Mike Casey for San Mateo County History Stories on Penn TV. Today I'm 3 miles south of La Honda at Sam McDonald Park. Now, Sam McDonald Park was dedicated in 1970. An additional 900 acres was added in 1976. It's part of a park complex of Pescadero Park, San Mateo Memorial Park, and as I said, Sam McDonald Park. Now, the parks border each other and they're connected by trails. Of the three parks, Sam McDonald Park is the thickest and densest. Its terrain is very steep and hilly, so it really caters mainly to hikers, backpackers, and equestrians. It goes between an elevation between 300 to 3,000 feet. In the northwest, it's mainly redwood and Doug fir forest. To the southwest, grassy knolls and open ridges. Now, from some of those open ridges, especially from Town Ridge, you can take a look at Butno Ridge, Skyline Ridge, and beyond to the Pacific Ocean. During the rainy seasons and springtime, it's host to some exotic forms of mosses, mushrooms, and beautiful wildflowers. It's home to a wide variety of fauna: bobcats, raccoons, deer, garter snakes, garden snakes, jays, quails, woodpeckers, and the ever iconic mollusk of the Santa Cruz Mountains, the banana slug. Today we're mainly here to tell the story of the park's namesake, Sam McDonald. Now, Sam McDonald bought 430 acres here in 1917. When he bought that property, he also built a lodge, and he named it Chichihuahua, which in Indian means little squirrel. Now, Sam was proud of his Indian heritage. He was 1/8 Choctaw Indian, so I'm assuming Chichihuahua means little squirrel in Choctaw. And ladies and gentlemen, I am standing of what remains of Chichihuahua Lodge. This was Sam's home away from home for 40 years, starting in 1917 to 1957. This was a place where he would like to entertain his friends. To that end, he dammed Alpine Creek, which is a couple feet in this direction. Because he was the son of a Methodist minister, this area here, Chichihuahua Lodge, this area by La Honda, was also a source of, or a place where he could meditate, pray, and just reflect on his life. In addition to being a refuge for Sam and his friends, he wanted his land to be an asylum for the creatures of the forest, and no lumbering was allowed. He also was a well-known figure in the town of La Honda. Sam was 6'4". He had a Model A Ford, so he would be spotted in La Honda many times on the weekends and when he was on vacation from his job. He was also one of the best known and best liked men in La Honda over those years. It's not too surprising to the people at Stanford University because he was also one of the best known and best liked men at Stanford University. Now, altogether, this is not too remarkable, except for the fact that in 1884, Sam was born the grandson of freed African-American slaves. And at this time, was the only African-American to own property in the Redwoods. And at the time, he was the only African-American to hold a major administrative position at an American university. Now, at Stanford, Sam came in 1903. His first jobs was as a teamster, working a mule and a plow on the excavation for the museum. He also worked on laying the gravel on all the roads at Stanford, and he also moonlighted as being a night watchman. Part of that job as being a night watchman was to patrol the male dormitories to control the student drinking. And I can assure you that the student drinking was not a problem when Sam was on patrol. His first housing at Stanford was a training room in the old football stadium. He later moved to the track house. He converted an attic into living quarters for himself, and there he would remain. That would be his permanent living quarters from that time until his death in 1957. Sam was devoted to the students at Stanford, and he would often hold court in his remodeled attic in the track house. He would provide meals, even loans sometimes when people were short of funds at the end of the month. And he would also dispense with this homespun philosophy based mainly on the Golden Rule. So Sam had a great relationship with the students. In fact, When Stanford students got married, many times Chichihuahua Lodge would be their honeymoon cottage. At this time, when he was young enough, he also liked to mix it up on intramurals at Stanford with the students in track and in boxing. Sam remembers an amusing story where there was a very formidable student that he boxed against, and he found out later that it was a ringer. It was one of the sparring partners for gentleman Jim Corbett, the former heavyweight champion of the world, and for those Bay Area trivia buffs, a native San Franciscan. It was in 1908 that Sam got his final job that he kept until his retirement, and that was the superintendent of athletic grounds and buildings. Now that included the boathouse, the tennis courts, the track field, and the football stadium. And eventually, Sam became known as a national authority on tracks. The Stanford track at Angel Field was second to none in the country. He was consulted by the University of California at Berkeley, UC Davis, Santa Clara University, to find out how he maintained that track. He was equally proficient in maintaining the turf at the Stanford football stadium. In fact, in 1921, he devised a method where he would do mowing the lawn every 5 yards in a different direction to give the appearance of different turf as you went along the football field. In addition to that, Sam was in charge of the sheep at Stanford. He started with a herd of 40, which later grew to 500 by 1918, and the grounds at the Stanford campus were well mowed by the herd of sheep. The shepherd for those herd of sheep was Billy McCullough. A little bit of more San Francisco or Bay Area trivia. He was the Scottish nephew of John McLaren, the father of Golden Gate Park. Sam also had a herd of 40 cows, which kept the university supplied with dairy products. Now, the other way that Sam endeared himself to the people and the students of Stanford University was his association with the Stanford Convalescent Home for Children, better known as Con Home. Starting in 1922 to 1954, there was a day known as Con Home Day. And this really was a series of activities over the course of a week where the students would do repairs on the actual structure of the hospital and the surrounding grounds. They would also visit and play games with the children. Sam was involved in the barbecue, the benefit barbecue, for everybody that worked on that project to help the Stanford Convalescent Hospital. Sam would barbecue a giant outdoor feed of beef and lamb and all the fixins. And that's how he first got associated with the convalescent home. He was a lifelong bachelor, and at first he was encouraged to mix with the children, and he was quite shy, but over the years, Sam endeared himself as like a second grandfather or godfather to all of those children. At first, he brought his concertina, then later told stories. As the years went on, he made sure he was there for every major holiday, Halloween, trick-or-treating, decorating the Christmas tree, the Easter egg hunt. In fact, he got so associated with the Stanford Convalescent Home for Children that Con Home Day in 1950 was changed to Sam McDonald Day. Speaking of barbecues, Sam was very proficient as a barbecuer. The staff, the athletes, the administrators, whether at Miramar Beach on the coast, Searsville Lake, or here at Chichihuahua Lodge, were treated to Sam's great outdoor feeds of lamb or beef. So that was another way that Sam became well-renowned on the Stanford campus. He also was pretty well connected with some of the celebrities on the Stanford campus that later became nationally known figures. For instance, he knew Mrs. Leland Stanford before her death in 1905. He knew every Stanford president, starting with David Starr Jordan, all the way up to his death in the 50s. In fact, Raymond Lyman Wilbur, the president in 1939, when he introduced Sam, when a way was named for him, a street was named for Sam in Stanford, Sam McDonald Way, the president of Stanford, Ray Lyman Wilbur, said, "I'd hate to have an election take place on this campus with me running against Sam. I would fear the results." He also was acquainted with a member of the founding class of '95, President Herbert Hoover. Whenever President Hoover visited the campus, he and Mrs. Hoover made sure they touched bases with Sam. And because Sam was an avid gardener and had a beautiful garden on the campus, Mrs. Hoover and him would actually trade gardening tips. Goodwin Knight was a graduate of 1917. He later became the governor of California from 1952 to 1958. He was another famous alumnus that also would check in with Sam whenever he visited the campus. Now, Sam also helped the university in other ways. During World War I, when they were short of funds, Sam was a very astute investor. He helped meet the payroll during World War I. During World War II, his garden was expanded into a 5-acre Victory Garden to help with the war effort. Also during that time when trees were in shortage for Christmas trees, Sam would come back here to his property in La Honda and make sure that the kids had a proper Christmas tree. Well, as the years went on, Sam only reached the 7th grade education, but he was a self-educated man. He had passed a number of civil service exams, but every time he had a chance to leave Stanford and get another job, he couldn't bear to leave the Stanford campus. In the early 50s, Holly Siedenberg, an employee at the convalescent home, got together all of Sam's records of his 50 years at Stanford. He had kept mementos and notes and correspondence, and she was able to transfer it into a book called Sam McDonald's Farm. Now that's a double pun from Old McDonald, but also Leland Stanford's property was a horse ranch before it was Stanford University, and it's known as the farm. So anyway, Sam McDonald's Farm was a book published, all the proceeds going to the Stanford Convalescent Home for Children. The additional correspondence, which was 50 years of correspondence, was made into another book called Dear Sam. In 1954, Sam McDonald retired from Stanford University with a big retirement dinner at Ricky's Restaurant in Palo Alto. He was awarded a car and he was inducted into the Stanford Hall of Fame. Also, the big games. I wanted to mention Sam's attendance at all of the big games for 50 consecutive years. Sadly, Sam died a few weeks before the big game against the University of California in 1957. A final tribute from the university was displayed at the stadium that day. The Stanford band, rather than marching in the form of the axe, which is the traditional prize for the winner of the big game, they formed the letters Sam while they played the Stanford hymn. The student body had a card stunt that made out the letters in memory of Sam. So that was Sam's final tribute on campus. Now, we talked about Sam's devotion to the students and especially to the children of the convalescent home. In his will, when he died, he left all of this property, 430 acres, and Chichihuahua Lodge to the Stanford Convalescent Home. Because they did not have immediate need for that property, they sold it to the county of San Mateo for $467,000, and it was eventually turned into the park that we're standing in now. And considering Sam's devotion to youth and to children, it's quite fitting that right now in the park there are 3 youth camps in operation. In this lodge, when Sam lived here, he had a number of inspirational quotes that he had posted on the wall. One of them was from William Penn, and it stated, "He who does good for good's sake, without expectation of reward or praise, will be assured that in the end." And I think no more fitting words can be said about Sam McDonald, the giant of the Redwoods, and Chichihuahua Lodge, and Sam McDonald of Stanford University. This is Mike Casey for San Mateo County History Stories, and I'll see you next time.
This show is made possible through underwriting support from the Bohannon Foundation.